I'm back. Welcome to my channel. This is Kimberly Purpose. Hello, family. Today, I wanted to do another video about tracing your roots. As African Americans, the Aborigines, American Aborigines, I find that it's very important to trace your root. And I want to talk about this particular article that I found, which was quite interesting. But I also want to talk about how important it is to learn from your elders. I mentioned that in another video, but I can't help but reiterate over and over again that it's very important to talk to the elders in your family and get as much information you can possibly get about your family roots. And that's how I was able to find a lot of the information that I have on my family. On my mom's side, uh, they were very proactive. A lot of them, whenever we did family reunions, they put together books with that they give out to every family member. You could purchase it, and it had like a record of our whole entire family tree, including the U.S. Census, copies of that, copies of our family members, the year they were born, when they were deceased, where were they buried. All that information was included in a book, in a family tree book, which I think is awesome. My mom's side of the family is on point. That's how I could find, that she could possibly been. Oh, I'm sorry, take that off. But that one of my family members was possibly listed on the Dolls Roll. The name was listed, but we weren't sure if it's her or not. But that was a lot of identity theft going on among the Aborigines. It's possible that your relative could have been listed on a Dolls Roll, but wasn't allowed to move forward because they were considered Negro. And what happened was a lot of the Caucasian settlers were able to take their place and still literally their identity, and be able to put their names in place of the relatives. So dates and date of birth and all that might be a little off because, if someone else took your family member's identity, it's easy to do. But I'm getting off on another topic. Let me get back on topic. But what I was saying was about learning from your elders is very important. I know, I noticed too, there's a difference in generations, because I know my grandmother, she came around, she was born right before the Great Depressions. She, right at the very beginning of the turn of the 19th century. No, not 19th century, 20th century. So, she was able to tell me about the Dawes Commission and everything in the 1920s because she was a little girl during that time period. And she was able to tell me about it because she heard about it from other people. But when I try to talk to my mother about it, who's a baby boomer, she don't like talking about it. She keep on insisting that she is Black, and she refused or act like she don't want to accept the fact that we are indigenous to this land. Like my grandmother, she told us all we were Indian, but my mother and a lot of the baby boomers I know are not as accepting. I'm not sure if it's a generational thing or it could be the indoctrination that's going on. But like that example, if you want to see the video, I did this video about Ancestral, I believe the Aboriginal Identity Crisis, one of the series I've done. I talked about the stories that my grandma shared about our family tree and how I was able to connect to a lot of things. And I also want to share a story about my grandfather and how I talked to him. Sometimes some stories may be totally off the beaten path, or just don't make no sense to you at the time when you listen to it. But you should listen to everything your elders say and, jot it down, remember it, because every piece of information is very important. And like when my grandfather told me about his grandmother, I thought it was the stupidest story. No, I wouldn't say stupid. It's just I didn't get much information out of him. I said, Granddad, don't you know anything about our family history? She said, he would always tell me, Kim, I only know one thing. Grandma Suki. Grandma Suki had black children. She had black children, yellow children, and red children. And I come from a black stock. And that's all I know is about Grandma Suki. And when he told me that, I just was so frustrated. He'll tell me that same story over and over again about Grandma Suki. And I was like, why is he telling me all this about Grandma Suki? I said, and he wouldn't tell me nothing else. And so I thought it was just a stupid tale, or it wasn't that important, until one day I decided to research the name Suki. And when I looked up Suki, that's when I learned that Suki is an Indian name. And what it means is an abbreviated name for an Indian name. It was abbreviated. It was a shortened name for Susana. I said, wow. So Susana is an Indian name and it means morning. So I learned something. And I said, wow. So at the time when I listened to my grandfather's story, Grandpa Eddie, I thought that, he was just babbling and babbling, but what he told me makes a lot of sense, and it lines up with all the stuff that was going on. And I actually got a first name. So listen to what your elders are telling you. I know the stories may not make sense to you at the time, but if you listen to it, maybe in the future while you're doing some research, it'll spark a light bulb, or you have an aha moment as to exactly what they were telling you. It may not make sense at that particular time, but when you do your research, you start to realize, hey, this is very important information. But anyway, I can go on and on about that. But like I said that's very important, is listening to your elders, getting names and everything. I just wanted to mention that. But this article is called Tracing Your African American Ancestors, and this is by Leslie Hubbard. I thought this was a really good article, and it's very short and straight to the point, which I think is great. I'm going to put a link to this article, and she gives some tips on what you can do to trace your ancestors as well. Like I said, number one is talking to your elders, getting stories, getting names. Those are very important. But this article goes on and says, since February is Black History Month, it is a great time to look at some of the resources available to trace African American ancestors. And if you have African American ancestors, it's a great time to start finding them. Particularly as you work through the Civil War and in the early periods, locating African American roots can be challenging. The good news is that there are some fabulous resources that are becoming more essential all the time. Post through 1870s research. If you're tracing African American ancestors and records after 1870, your research path looks similar to the research path of any U.S.-based family line. To begin this research, start with yourself and your immediate family and work back using standard U.S. records, such as censuses and vital and land records. You can use Family Search Online U.S. Research Guide, which includes a clickable map of the United States that directs you to research information for each state. I thought this was quite interesting. I didn't get a chance to check this out, but I'm going to click on it later. I just want to go through this article. I think that, that would be excellent if that does take you to some more resources. But let's continue. The transitional periods. For many people tracing African American roots, the periods during and right after the Civil War is key to research. In 1860, there are nearly 4 million enslaved individuals living in the United States, representing just under 13% of the population. They were considered property and were not included by names in most records before the emancipation in 1863. By following your ancestors closely to the records back through the Civil War and the aftermath, you can often see clues that leads to finding them in earlier records. And that's true, but I also want to point it out. I did another video about the Indian Wars, I believe it was the Creek Wars. You might want to check it out. There's the correlation between Indian Wars. What I was saying is, this article failed to also mention that African Americans are the Aborigines, aka African Americans, are indigenous. A lot of them are, most of us are indigenous here and are Aborigines. And so the Indian War is when a lot of the tribes fought against the U.S., against the military, and to try to fight and keep their land. And so I was thinking too, if you can look back at the Indian Wars and see when they took place and happened, there might be a correlation between the Indian Wars and when your ancestors were put into slavery and the dates. That might be a way you can some kind of way trace which tribe your family member came from. That's if they were captured during that particular time that the war took place. I might be totally off, but I was just thinking maybe sometimes with the wars, I like how they mentioned the Civil War. Sometimes you can trace through the wars. And also, I would think also the Indian Wars, because a lot of the Indians were being captured and thrown into slavery. You might can be able to trace your roots that way too, and maybe stumble across a tribe perhaps. But I think this is really great information right here. And also checking the property records is another great way to see if you can find anything about your ancestors. But let's continue. It says, in addition to the enslaved individuals in 1860, there were also 476,000 free colored persons living in the United States. Like I said, these free colored peoples are Aborigines. They were Indians, more than likely. If your family fell into the category, they should be included by name in many more records. See? And that's another thing you need to check into. Often, a key for success to finding your ancestors in records before this transitional period is to locate the names of those who own your enslaved ancestors. Knowing owners' names can focus on your search on specific records of that family, which can also include information about your family. Here are some records to look for in important periods that can help you understand your ancestors' lives and possibly help you locate the names of their owners so you can push their lines back further. See? I think this is quite interesting. See, they give you some more sources where you can look. It says here, the 1870 U.S. Census. You can get the U.S. Census online. And I think it goes further back. You can either go further back in the 1700s. You might can find some information as well. That might pinpoint your ancestors. Another one is the 1867 voter registry. Another one is the Freedmen's Bureau and Freedmen's Bank records. That's very important. People need to look into that. And the records of United States colored troops, USCT, in the Civil Wars. Wow, that's interesting too. I never thought of that. And they have links here, which is awesome. With the Freedmen's Bank, you can see if any of your relatives are listed there. I think Dane Calloway mentions this as well in in one of his videos, and several of his videos about the Freedmen's Bureau and the Freedmen's Bank records. Very important information. And then, of course, they go into before the war. It says here, before attempting research earlier than the Civil War, make sure you have gleaned all details that you can from the transitional records. Tracing enslaved ancestors prior to the Civil War often requires you to explore new types of records. Census records, which theoretically moves from only including head of households in the 1840s, to including every name starting in 1850. Oh, okay. So they used to only put the head of household before then. That's some critical information to know. Did not record names of those enslaved. Oh, wow. It says in 1840s include every name starting in 1850. Did not include names of those enslaved. So they didn't include the slaves. Wow. Even slave schedules kept with the 1850s and 1860 census typically only include information on enslaved individuals by gender and age, although there are a few exceptions. And it says, see how I decoded records for more information. So here it is. This is more resources right here. I didn't click on it, but some more articles. This website is a wealth of information. Has different links here that has more articles, more resources that you can look into to get more information about tracing your roots. And it says here, when searching for information prior to the Civil War, your ancestors would typically be linked with information on their owners. If they were enslaved records from this time period, there are likely a list of information about slaves included. And these are the things that's included in these records: wills and probable records of slave owners, okay, deed records, plantation records, other local records, okay. And I think the other local records is some areas name of enslaved individuals included in other records such as tax records, vital records. These records vary by time and place. Okay, for more details, on finding and using the records, see Family Search. And so they go into it. They got a little guide here as well. I'm not sure you have to pay for it or not, but it's a little guide here that you can go to give you more information. This is a treasure trove, and they got even more resources here. It says the National Archives. It says the National Archives African American Search. They got the Family Tree Magazine and Family Search link right down here below. So y'all might want to check this out to help with your family research. I'm going to definitely check it out. I just stumbled across this page. It was published on January 30th, 2017. So it was published last year. And so this is very interesting. I think this can definitely get you started in the right direction. So please like this video and thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. And till next time, peace and be blessed. And don't forget to check me out on Black Junction TV. And also don't forget to put your comments if you have found some other places to find your to trace your indigenous roots. If you have any more resources, I would love to hear about it. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace. Be blessed. Bye-bye.